It should be recording, I think. You can post a link.
Did you use the link that was on Slack? Really quick, is anybody in here running Windows that doesn't have Windows subsystem for Linux? Okay. Whoever raised their hand, you could look up Windows subsystem for Linux. There's a lot of good tutorials online, and it's really fast. But if it doesn't work out, ultimately, it doesn't fully matter.
Yeah, most of the stuff can be done on normal Windows, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
you have specific steps.
Yeah.
I didn't need it anyway.
Okay, I was gonna say.
All day.
I was
I would have, but I went to urgent care, so I didn't have. I'm guessing, was it a Paris moment or was there something actually present?
Just been trying to figure out what's wrong with the school for 8 weeks, and the school sucks. So we went to urgent care.
We need more.
The school kept telling her it's stuff, and then prescribing things that didn't do it. So she just got fed up and she was like, I'm just gonna go to urgent care.
Did that, anything useful come with that?
Urgent care immediately figured out what it was with one lab.
Oh my god.
Yeah, the school's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Invincible.
Well, did you hear my
Your bench?
Yeah, I was. We were both. Right? What's that? What is that?
That's great.
So as you come in, if you could fill out the survey, this is required by UMD, so do that, that'd be great.
Is that like rate my professor? Do we give you like a bad score?
Oh, you can just do that on the Slack.
Was it on Slack?
This, I can throw it in there.
Wait.
Yeah, I'll wait.
That would be epic.
Will do.
I need permission.
I don't need permission.
Oh, is it not letting you fill it out?
For,
Yeah, they want a contact trace for COVID.
this is not about COVID.
Well, the first part is.
Oh, the attendance bit?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was like, oh, I see nothing. This is about COVID. I'm providing my student ID.
Oh, no, that is. Yeah. HTML is a pretty big part of COVID contact
That's
tracing
right.
too, so
Yeah.
it's important we get
Well,
information about
COVID is
that.
in the name.
Yeah, that is true. HT COVID ML.
Nothing escapes my mind.
My mind is like a steel trap.
Yeah, well, steel rods almost a stainless steel, so I don't know how good that is.
Well, everything goes away at times. So
Not stainless steel. Stainless steel is no. Right. That's right. Like, well, I don't have to explain myself. Oh, no, it's not.
Take a laptop.
Yes. No, it's
doesn't say.
it's not recording. He was
Are you
was
sure?
testing you.
It says we can stop it.
That's the share.
Share, screen share.
Oh, what?
Oh,
See
no.
the little dot? That means it's recording.
Yeah. Why didn't you see that at the beginning, Chris? You absolutely fool.
Because if I was looking up too high, then when I swallow my words across, that would choke.
Okay, and
And I don't want to do that. That's crazy.
you're quite familiar with Chris. Okay. I thought you were doing that.
All right, everybody get this filled out? Okay. So last week we had the DigiKey Hackathon. We had 2 teams from UMD represent and decently well. Anybody besides me? Victor, want to talk about it?
I don't need to talk about it.
Yeah, what do we do?
Basically, it consists of like pretty much 3 big problem areas. We do short problems, long problems, and word problems. And it's really just you figure out the algorithm and then you pretty much code it. I don't know. It's a lot of the stuff you do like on LeetCode or HackerRank or something.
Yeah, if any of you are on math team, I found it to be really similar to math team from high school. They give you word problems and you just gotta answer them. Oh, it's pretty fun. We got one team got 6th place, another team got 8th or something. I don't know,
Out of how many?
15. So not bad for not much practice. Now we can move on to our main segment for the night. Talk about web development again. So who here still has their code from last week or 2 weeks ago? All right, well, that's good because we're not using it anyways. Let's see. So what we're gonna do today. Hmm.
I think it's the switch.
Perfect.
If it wasn't
Yeah,
Switch,
thank
I was
you.
gonna make fun of you for levels.
I have a mega mind, dude.
Let's see.
Why are you here then?
Also, he's
Pretty
not
good.
good.
Just KO'd me.
Why is he here to make fun of people who don't know what they're doing?
No.
No, he's here to tell people where the light is. That is the only purpose. You can leave that purpose.
Okay, so we're gonna start with making a new folder, just like we had before.
Get there.
How do we get to our terminal?
I don't know.
Yeah, so if you're running Windows, you should have Windows Subsystem for Linux downloaded. If not, we can still work around that. It's just a few extra steps. So to check if you have it downloaded, go to your start menu and search Ubuntu.
Okay. I have that.
Sweet. All right. You should be good to go then. And basically what you want to do is find a place on your computer where you want to store the stuff we're going to do today. You can keep that in your top level. It's totally fine, but I like to keep things organized. So that's the way. Good pro tip for the future. Keep a neat computer.
Everything on the desktop.
Don't do that. That will slow your computer to a standstill.
How do you select where you want to go?
Yeah, so let's do a little intro here. Basically, you should start with the tilde. Yours probably won't look like mine. I've done some modifications to make mine look fancy. Yours probably just black and white. Good to go, and it'll probably say something like this to the left. This is your root directory, and all you got to do to move or your home directory, all you got to move move folders, you type cd, and that's change directory. But before we cd, we have to make a new directory. So make a new directory or a folder. It's just mkdir. Oh yeah, and if you're on Mac, terminal, Linux, you should know what's going on. And I already made my folder. You can name it whatever you want. Just don't put any spaces in it, because that's not going to work out for you.
What if I named it quote whatever you want?
Well, there you go. That's going to be really annoying to type out.
Well, I'll just type a W and then I'll tab.
Oh, damn, you got it.
I was I'm not going to do that because why would I do that?
Fair enough. After you made your folder, you can change directories into it. I'm not going to go into there. I'm going to go into the folder I made, but all you have to do is type the folder name or the path name to the folder. Is everybody following so far?
So I don't have like it doesn't show like how my users. It's like a just a dollar sign. Oh, I'm doing it right.
Oh, no, it's hard to tell without the yeah, it's close. The dollar sign is.
I don't know. I literally have no idea. I wanted the same thing. I stopped caring.
I really want this.
I've already tried, but two things. A, it hasn't been working.
I'll prove it to you that I'm worried that it's an integral part of the
Yes.
computer and it's
It could be. I also don't.
Okay, so to prove that we did something here, if you type ls, okay, you type ls before you change into that directory, it'll list everything that you have at the current level. Ls is just list. If you want to see more stuff, you can do ls-la. This gives it a little different formatting. And if you did ls before you change directories, you should see the folder you just made. Everybody following? Okay. So now we can change directories.
There.
All right. Now, who does not have a text editor like VS Code or Janus? No. Janus, you use Nano, which is a text editor, but for what we're doing today, Nano would be really annoying to use. Yeah, if you're comfortable with Emacs, your computer might have it ready to go to begin with. If not, I like VS Code a lot, and all you have to do is look up Visual Studio. It's free from Microsoft, and it's kind of clunky, but it's also free, so you can't complain there. Fun note, people that are interested in JetBrains stuff, as a CS student, you get that for free. So if you want PyCharm or any of the other ones, if you talk to the CS front desk, they should be able to help you get that for free.
What again? What did you say?
PyCharm or any JetBrains IDE products, forget it. Doesn't matter.
Go up to them and say, "Hey, I know you have some computers." Are they just like really like powerful text editors, or?
Honestly, I've never used them.
Okay.
I only use VS Code, so I don't know what I'm missing. But for DigiKey, we used PyCharm, and I guess that worked out pretty well. It's a really popular programming environment, but you have to pay like $200 a year or something for it. So it's pretty cool that you get it for free as a student. Anyways, we'll finally get to coding now. If you have VS Code, this probably won't work for you out of the box. Code dot. All you have to do is find VS Code on your computer, open it up, and open to the folder path. I can show you how to do that quick. It's pretty self-explanatory, but
Oh, it did work the first time?
file open,
Actually, yes, interesting.
open. If you've done it right, you want to trust the authors. There should be nothing on this side here. Okay. There should be nothing over here. So we're starting with a blank folder. And what we can do is just new file, that's here, type index.html.
Any particular reason?
It's just a really common naming convention. Usually it's index.html, style.css, and something else for JavaScript. We're keeping everything in HTML, just this one file today to keep things simple, but in the future, we will expand. Okay. Is everybody at a screen like this? Does everybody have a text editor?
It's all in.
Okay, we can wait for you. It doesn't take that long to download, so. Were you here last week at all, or 2 weeks ago?
No, I missed that one.
Okay, well, while we're going, we can. I want to lean into review because I don't think I did a very good job teaching the very first time. Yeah. Everything in HTML, HTML is a markup language. It uses tags like this. It uses angle brackets. Not much else. So you'll have an opening element tag. And a closing element. There are self-closing tags, but those are very rarely used, so let's just pretend they don't exist. Every element needs a closing element tag, and to close it, you just have a backslash or slash. Usually the content of the HTML goes between these, so let's say we want to write a paragraph. This is what's going to be displayed, and these outer tags tell the computer how to display it. So if we have a P versus an H1, which is the biggest header you have, and a header is just like the chapter on a book, it's going to be really big compared to the rest of the text. These two are going to be styled differently because of the outer tags. Oh, yep, good catch. This making sense?
Is that HL or H capital I or H1?
H1.
Okay.
Now, these give you some styling options, but if you were to only use HTML, your pages, everybody's website would look exactly the same, and there'd be no stylistic differences. So what you can do is you can take something like a normal paragraph, that's the P, and give it a class.
Yeah.
And if you give it a class of green, this doesn't actually do anything to the HTML code, but it gives you options to style it later with CSS. And there is more to HTML. That's pretty much most of it. You're only going to use double quotes. Don't mess with single quotes. There's also a few other things with how you set up the file. So, in HTML. And for that, I'm going to the editor because I can never remember what it is. If you, this is one of my favorite things about VS Code. And go into HTML, type exclamation mark, hit enter, and now my HTML file is all set up. I just hit exclamation mark. You have to make sure in the bottom corner this says HTML.
Corner, which bottom?
Bottom right. Select language mode. Exclamation mark, and then I just hit enter. Is that working? Wonderful. Yeah, I just honestly wouldn't recommend memorizing any of this. It's not that much, but at the same time, I never type it out. The big things to remember here, all this, pretend it's not there. It's not important to us. This title, this is what will show up on like a Google search. It's the for web crawlers, and it's all metadata here. This isn't going to be anything that a user sees, except for on the top bar of the web page. You can also put the little icon that shows up in the tab bar. And within the body, that's where the content goes for users. Is everybody caught up at this point? Am I going too fast or too slow?
Thank you, guys. This is perfect.
Okay. Mhm. Oh, don't worry about that. That was something I did last week and I shouldn't have. So don't pretend I didn't do that. Yeah, now we can start making a web page. I'm gonna do some stuff here, but feel free to write whatever you want. This is just going to get some practice and feel comfortable writing some HTML and then viewing it in the browser.
Do you have the HTML extension? So the CSS, it's like
If you look on the side here, those little building blocks on the right, on the left, click that and search HTML.
and probably CSS too.
Yeah, and JS, JavaScript.
Oh, yeah.
This pinkish orange one and the blue one.
Pinkish one.
One of them was like a 3, the other one was like a 5.
Oh. I said.
I was leaning back. So the color.
Look, I might be colorblind.
Okay. So everybody wrote what they want? Do you want an extra minute or?
Yeah, like an extra.
All right, sounds good.
Is there a way to, so there's a first bracket and a second bracket and everything inside is what it prints. Is there a way to like
when I use Visual Studio, not code, just Visual Studio, you can press tab to go to the end of the line. Is there something like that here, so you can just click to the next line?
Oh, there's definitely a lot of shortcuts, but I don't know them.
Okay. Maybe shift down or something like that.
On Mac, if you want to go to the end of a line, it's Command over. And I'm guessing for Windows, it's Control over. That's not working. I don't know.
Oh, that's better.
You try Alt over too.
I'll mess around with it. No, I just, if you're typing in the middle of the line, I want it to go to the end of the line. Oh. It's really useful. For control paths, but still, yeah, it's too much. Or it's not enough. It's not good enough. No, that's not good.
All right. We good now?
Mhm.
Okay. So before we show this and what it looks like, anybody tell me what some of these are going to look like on screen?
Well, the UL is just gonna be like 3 bullet points that have 1, 2, and 3 next to it.
Yeah, exactly. What about the OL? Anyone got that? Yeah, unordered list and ordered list. Perfect. How about this one? Carter?
Gonna be the text of Google it, and when you click on it, it'll take you to Google.
Okay. All right. At this point, I don't know where it is on Windows, but I'm sure there is this button somewhere. If you hit Terminal in the top bar, hit New Terminal. I don't know if this is going to work. So if it doesn't, we'll just, there's another way to do it. This is just usually what people do. So is this working for people? Yeah? Okay. How you doing?
I don't really know what to write, so I'm kind of just watching.
Okay. Yeah, if you, this is just kind of dummy text to get started. This isn't really what we're going to be building onto. So no worries. At this point, if you want to open this in your default browser, all you have to type is open and then the name of our file, which is index.html. You type that into the terminal here. There's nothing special about that terminal compared to the other one. It's just nice to have it in the same screen. And now, as we can see, things turned out pretty much exactly how we said. Google it, take us to Google.
Mine just says command.
That makes sense. Okay.
It worked for me, so I got it.
Are you on Linux?
Yeah.
And you're on Windows, or wait, you're on Linux too. Yeah.
If you download live server, all you have to do is right click in there. Open live server,
Okay.
and then open stuff.
Is that an extension?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the-
Yeah. So if this isn't working for you, like, what's your name?
Jacob.
Jacob. Like Jacob said, download this extension here. This is really important, so we can't skip this step.
And then instead of doing all that, you just right click. Open live server.
You right click on the
In the HTML doc.
right here.
No, moreover, yeah, like right. in the actual code.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and then it will say open live server.
Sweet. Thank you.
Is there a way to have it do that from the terminal? Just type it?
You don't need to do it.
Yeah, that's all we're using the terminal for. So and feel free to get rid of that if you're not doing the open thing.
Yeah, so you actually set the right there. It's like,
Oh, okay.
Is it working?
sure. Yes.
Is it not working for anybody? Alrighty. Is it not working, or is it just, are you working on getting it going?
It's not working. Both. I'll do it somewhere. Yeah.
So like, how do you get it? Say it next to each other.
Oh, yeah.
Like, serves. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
It's always that, yeah. Never ready to talk about it.
Everybody else?
No.
Good? Okay. Our next thing that we're going to do, you get the live server working? Sweet. Is we're going to move into CSS. And now, just like HTML, this is a markup language. This is going to take in your stuff and display based on your code, not do any program functions. So if we want to, does anybody remember how this works?
Like,
Mhm.
so like, for like, I don't think we defined anything as a class yet, so like,
Let's say I want to make the paragraph green.
so I think you would just do like P, something, and then like, or equal to green, is that what you have to do? I know you have to like,
Pretty
yeah,
close.
that.
Yeah. So it's like HTML. CSS is, the syntax is extremely simple. There's probably about 10 things you need to know, and you got the syntax fully down. The tricky thing is getting all your CSS to work how you want it to. And for what we're going to be doing today, that's not necessarily a problem, but I know CSS is one of the biggest hurdles in web development. So if you have problems with CSS, just ignore it. That's really not an important role. And in the real world, you'll probably have a graphic designer do all your CSS anyways, but we're going to explore it today just because it is important to know the basics. So you want to enclose all this in curly brackets. The thing out here is going to tell what HTML element to select. And then this is an attribute followed by a colon. And then you can tell it a color or a number. And now our P is green.
Me too.
Everybody get this to work? And you have to enclose all of this in a style tag at the top of your HTML.
Just have to save it. Don't forget to save it. I forgot to save it.
Yeah, make sure you save and refresh every time. Now, one of the features of CSS is it works from top to bottom. So if you see something like this, what color do you expect the paragraph to become by the time it displays? Correct. So we can see that in action. We go over here. That makes a lot of sense because CSS is cascading style sheets, and the cascading is saying from top to bottom. Always refreshes. So you could actually have multiple stylings of P, and it would be totally fine. It would just totally overwrite everything that came before it. The bottom one would. Does everybody feel pretty caught up at this point? There's a lot more to CSS. We hardly scratched the surface, but for what we're doing with JavaScript, this is all we need to know with Java or with CSS and HTML. So if there's no other questions, we're going to jump into JavaScript. All right. Sounds good. JavaScript, if you type Control-Alt-J in your browser, if it's Google Chrome, I don't know what it is you're using, Firefox or others. Do you know how to get there? The developer tools?
I think it's also you can just right click it. It's like inspect and then like Q or something.
F12.
What do you say? This was?
Control-Alt-J, I think. Okay, that's what it is on Mac. Not very helpful.
It doesn't have. You right click it.
Yeah, no, I read it.
Otherwise, if you're on Chrome, thanks for coming. Have a good night.
Bullshit.
There is going to be a view tab up here. And this is definitely on Windows. Developer, JavaScript console. Are you good? Okay. Now, at this point, we can actually start writing JavaScript right out of the bat. And JavaScript is a very simple language, which is one of the things that makes it really difficult. We'll see why in a little bit here. Oops. This is truly a programming language. HTML and CSS, they couldn't do math like this. This is one of the defining characteristics of a programming language. Congratulations, you're now coders. So JavaScript can do all sorts of different things, can do multiplication. Yeah, and one of the fundamental building blocks of, is this making sense? Have people used some programming language before? Okay, JavaScript is very similar. Its syntax uses semicolons and a few other things. Who here has never heard of object-oriented programming? Great. So object-oriented programming is basically saying that everything can be deduced down to some data and some actions. So if we were to take this bottle here, what are some things we could say about it? Here, liquid. The liquid is liquid. What else? Like size or dimensions. Got 2 liter volume. Smooth. Busy. Half full. What can we do with it? Open it, pour. Okay. So in object-oriented programming, we have these attributes that the root beer has. Those are called members. And they can either have member functions or member variables. This is incredibly important to understand with JavaScript. And I've been trying to learn web programming since 8th grade. And this has been one of the biggest stumbling blocks. It's like at the CS1, they explain object-oriented programming. It's like, oh my goodness, everything makes sense. So if we are in JavaScript and we want to say, make our root beer orange. All we have to do is type root beer because there's already a root beer object in existence. Let's just pretend that's the case. And then we type dot. And this is saying, okay, we're doing something with the numbers. And then we can give it an attribute. Number variable, color. We want that to be equal to orange. So what we're doing is we're stating our object. We're saying, okay, go into that object, give me its color, and set it to orange. Everybody follow? Okay. You can also do things. Let's say we want to open the review. Just like before, we say we're going into its numbers, and now we're going to open it up. And these parentheses, does anybody here not know what a function is? Great. These parentheses are just saying it's a function or an action in our analogy. Okay. Is this making sense? Now, something fun we can do with this knowledge of JavaScript is we can go on to something called Cookie Clicker. Everybody's played this game, right? Screwing around in class.
But I understand it.
Okay.
It's like a venture capitalist, right?
Yeah, exactly. Want to click the cookie. Want to get as many as you can, but that is a lot of work. But good thing that we're lazy and programmers, so we can hack into. That's not what I want.
The firewall is too strong.
Hey,
what's it hanging?
It knows we're in here.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So all we have to do at this point, if we want a bunch of cookies, we can say, oh, and the only reason we're able to do this is because I looked this up and I know how to, I know what variables there are, or what objects there are that make up the game. You wouldn't just be able to go into anything and say game dot cookies, you know, that doesn't make any sense. But it does here. So what we can do is type game.cookies, and we can put a ridiculous amount of cookies in, and now we got a shit ton of cookies. And similarly, we can also, actually, that's not going to work. If you have a friendly thing here. Yeah, it should give you an achievement for being a poor sport. Cheating cookies taste awful. Wonder how that one works. Yeah, I had some fun today. Yeah, so here's some other things you can do. You can change your cookies per second, and then it will count up without having to buy any buildings. It's a new feature. Anyways, this is just highlighting that the Cookie Clicker made this available to us. That's why we're able to do things like this. But there is a huge risk when you just run someone's JavaScript. They could totally hack your computer, no joke. So only run JavaScript that you find online if you understand it or you trust the person that wrote it. HTML and CSS, you're probably fine. I mean, if you do run into problems, it's not my fault. But I don't see how that would happen. All right, so now back to our code. Yeah, let's cool down my fans a bit. So now we can go ahead and say goodbye to all our hard work here.
Is there a way to just comment it out? Because I would.
Yeah. Yeah, with VS Code, if you just write control /, at least in Mac, it's command /. So
And what parts of it?
we're not using anything we put in body. Control /. You manually commented it out?
Yeah.
Totally. And comments in HTML. Block comments look like that. And I guess that's just comments in general. I don't know. I don't know how comments work anymore because I use my shortcut all the time. So are we all ready to go? All right. I don't think we're going to have time to finish what we to finish everything I had planned, but that's totally fine. I think this was a lot more useful session than last time. So we're going to start by making a div. Does anybody remember what a div is? Yes, but what does that mean?
Spaces things out differently, and rather than just the default spacing of how things are always listed, you can like have things be like more to the side or the middle, right? Something like that.
That's something you can do with divs, and that's one of the reasons they're commonly used. But what a div basically is it's just, I think someone said it, it's just a block. And you can put things in the block. You can style this block so the whole thing's yellow and put stuff in it. Or you can style it so you never see it and just move it around. So it gives you more control, like you said, over positioning, over backgrounds, over all sorts of things. If you go into the developer console on most websites, you'll see just layers and layers and layers of divs. It's a super common thing. And there's two block types in HTML. There's a div and a span. The only difference is that a span is going to stretch across the whole web page. Always, unless you tell it not to. Div will not do that unless you tell it to. So divs are generally more used than spans. So we can go ahead in this div, and someone mentioned it earlier, classes. We're going to name this class light. If you want to name it something else, feel free. It has no effect on the code, but it does make things easier to understand. And we're not going to put anything in it. We're going to make another div. And we're going to give it the class of switch, or no, flipper. I want to name it switch, but switch, just like C++ and a lot of languages, is already written in for JavaScript, so it'll make things annoying if we name this switch. What we're going to do is we're going to make a simulate a light switch. You push a button, it'll turn the light on. If you push it, it'll turn it off. And once you got this going, we can go ahead and start styling it. And to target a class, it's just a dot, not light. So this is going to target the class. It's going to yell at you if you don't have anything between the parentheses, but it's not inherently an error. So what we can do is give it a color of gray, because our light's not on by default. We can give it a height 60 pixels. Width 60 pixels. No space there. Can't do that. And we're not going to worry about positioning right now, because positioning, in my opinion, is the hardest thing about CSS. And did anybody do the Flexbox Froggy or Grid Garden? Okay,
I
so
did not have it. It's just kind of tedious, but
For sure.
you're right. I forgot all of it. I
Mhm.
cannot do it right now.
yeah, so I recommend we'll cover positioning next week or 2 weeks or whatever. We'll figure that out then. And then we also want to target our flipper. Give it a color of red. We're also going to give this one a border. You have to say what type of line the border is. So you can have a dotted border, you can have a dashed border, or a solid border. If you don't specify what it is, it'll assume it's a blank border. And then we'll say it's 2 pixels wide and black.
The syntax calls for the width beforehand. Does it matter?
What do you mean?
Like when you hover over it, hover over border. No, over border. It calls for line width first, so the order doesn't matter.
Oh, yeah, no. These just signify borders. So this is saying you can put any of these or not.
Okay.
This is really common in a lot of programming. It's 2 pipes. That's 4. Okay. Is everybody with me? Anybody not? Perfect. We can go ahead and run this now. Hopefully it works. Let's see, what do we do? Make this more noticeable. This isn't red either. Oh yeah, I know. Yep, background color. Thank you. I do that all the time. Color is, if you're writing text, color will specify the font color, not the background color. So now we can refresh. There we go. And let's add touch to turn on light. We'll add this to the div or the flipper. And as you can obviously see, it's not doing anything at the moment. All right, we'll try to do some, we'll get the basics of JavaScript here. We have everything we need with styling and HTML to get us going on the switch. And now we need to add a script tag. Now, script tag says this is going to be some code that's running. It's going to assume it's JavaScript. And if you notice, our styling was at the top of the page, but our script is at the bottom. Why do you think that is? Yeah, because you want to be able to load all the elements first before you start messing with them. And that's what we're going to be doing with JavaScript. So with HTML, we are utilizing a model called the document object model. And all the stuff between head and body, everything between the HTML tags is, or everything in the body, sorry, is part of the document object model. And what this is going to say is the whole web page is the document, just like our root beer bottle. That's the thing we're targeting, or like the game. We're targeting the document. That's the thing that lets us edit everything else. So we're going to type document dot, because we want to access the members of the document. Get elements by ID. We're going to go ahead and change these to be ID instead. And for CSS, that means you have to change the dot to a hashtag. Anybody remember the difference between ID and a class?
IDs are like individual for things. You can't have two IDs, but class could be attributed to like multiple different things.
Exactly. Typically, you want to use IDs when you can. I'm not sure why I did class earlier. What we're going to be able to do with this is type document, go into that document, and run the function, get us the elements that have the ID light. And now it's returned that. And if we just run this, we're going to get this div here. But we're not done because that's a pretty useless thing. Just, okay, get us that. But to start with, we are just going to save that inside of a variable called light. In JavaScript, you don't have ints. Well, you do, but you don't define variables like you do in C++ or other more expressive languages. You just say let, and then your variable. If it's a constant, then it's a const, and then your variable. And semicolons are optional in JavaScript, but you should probably use them. At this point, we can go into light. Just like before, we have our element, and we want to go into that element, and we want to get its style. And then we're going to go into its background color. And all these things you can find online. They're not things you necessarily, if you use it all the time, you're going to memorize these things. But if you don't, you'll probably have to just look stuff up like this. You just kind of intuitively know there's got to be a way to do this. And that'll make sense later. Background color. That's not a function, so we're going to leave off the parentheses. And we're going to give it yellow. And we're going to run that because we're out of time. But if you remember, it was gray before, and we never changed the styling. So if this runs correctly, which it's not, go figure. Let's see what happened. Yep, thank you. Yeah, sweet. Yeah, sometimes cases matter, I guess, in JavaScript. They definitely matter. If you notice here too, this is really quick. In HTML, or CSS, if you want to have multi-word things, you do a background dash color. And in JavaScript, it's background and then the capital C for color. This is camel case. And if you're writing your own background color function or background color data member, you don't have to do it this way. But generally speaking, it's best to follow the conventions because then things will look uniform and it'll be easier to find bugs. Likewise with CSS, although you're not going to be writing your own attributes for CSS.
Use like if statements like control stuff in like this.
Totally.
Okay. 'Cause I haven't.
Yeah, it's very similar to every other programming language. People like have made drones that fly with JavaScript. It's not explicitly for the web, but that was what it was originally designed to do. It's really not a good programming language. Honestly, it's one of the worst ones because you can do so many things wrong and not know until it's too late. Like C++, it's always yelling at you. It's saying this, you forgot your semicolon. This is not an int, this is a double. This is blah, 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 blah. Segfault, not gonna happen in JavaScript. It's just gonna happen wrong. And you're gonna have to notice it. So very easy to break. But you can do a lot of things with it if you want to. Is there any other questions? All right, feel free to head out. Keep this code. Remember where you put it. I mean, worst case, I can just upload it and take it, but it's good to have your own code. See it evolve. And we'll get this working right away
And then how
next
do we
week.
do the thing with the Git? Because I remember like I finally logged in, but I didn't know like how to actually upload anything to like the join Git hub thing.
Yeah, I'll think about covering that in the future.
Okay.
That can be kind of a hassle. It's in your upper division classes, they'll have whole weeks, like 1 week, your first week will usually be devoted to Git. So it's not impossible. It's not really hard, but it's hard enough where it'd be annoying to just.
Like I never like make a Git repository here and like make stuff and change, but like dealing with it online, that's the part where it's
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Yeah, GitHub is.
it's the best. It's
Oh, yeah.
definitely good for like saving stuff.
Before people